The assignment Zara Nightshade moved through the shadows of the Metropolitan Museum. Like liquid darkness itself, her footsteps made no sound on the marble floors. Her breathing controlled to near silence. 23 years of training had honed her into the perfect weapon, emotionless, efficient, deadly. The Crimson Syndicate had molded her from childhood, stripping away every trace of humanity until only the mission remained. Tonight's target, Dr. Julian Rivers, a brilliant archaeologist whose recent discovery threatened to expose the Syndicate's centuries-old secrets. The ancient artifact he'd unearthed contained information that could topple governments and reveal the shadow organization that had manipulated world events for generations. He had to be eliminated before he could decipher its true meaning. Zara paused behind a towering Egyptian sarcophagus, her enhanced hearing picking up the soft scratch of a pencil on paper. There he was, working late in his private office, completely oblivious to the danger stalking him through the darkened corridors. She'd studied his file extensively, 32 years old, unmarried, dedicated to his work to the point of obsession. He had no family, few friends, and a tendency to lose himself in research for days at a time. The perfect victim. No one would miss him until it was too late. She slipped her custom blade from its sheath, the titanium edge gleaming in the moonlight that filtered through the museum's grand windows. The weapon was her constant companion, an extension of her own body. She'd killed 47 people with it, each death quick and clean, leaving no evidence behind. Tonight would be number 40-8. As she approached his office, Zara caught sight of him through the glass partition. Dr. Rivers sat hunched over his desk, surrounded by ancient texts and artifacts. His dark hair was disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it in frustration. Wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose, and several days' worth of stubble shadowed his jaw. He looked tired, vulnerable, completely absorbed in his work. Something unexpected stirred in Zara's chest, a flutter of, "What?" She pushed the foreign sensation aside. Emotions were weaknesses the Syndicate had trained out of her years ago. She was a weapon, nothing more. Weapons didn't feel. They simply acted. She tested the office door handle, unlocked, careless. He really had no idea how dangerous his discovery was. How many powerful people wanted him silenced. The door opened with barely a whisper as she stepped inside. "Blade. Ready, Dr. Rivers," she said softly. He looked up, startled but not immediately afraid. His eyes were a warm brown behind his glasses, filled with intelligence and curiosity rather than fear. "I'm sorry, the museum is closed. Visiting hours are. I'm not here for the exhibits." Zara stepped closer, her blade catching the light from his desk lamp. Now fear flickered across his features, but something else too. Concern? "You've discovered something that doesn't belong to you. I don't understand. What are you talking about?" Julian slowly stood, his hands raised peacefully. "Look, if this is about the Mesopotamian tablet I found last month, I can explain. No explanations necessary." Zara raised the blade, muscle memory taking over. One quick thrust to the heart, and it would be over. She'd done this countless times before. It should have been automatic. But as she looked into his eyes, those impossibly warm, intelligent eyes, something inside her hesitated. The blade trembled almost imperceptibly in her grip. "Please," Julian said quietly, and his voice held no anger, only a deep sadness. "Whatever you think I've done, whatever someone has told you about me, I've spent my entire life trying to preserve history, not destroy it. I've never hurt anyone." The sincerity in his voice hit her like a physical blow. When was the last time someone had spoken to her with such gentle honesty? When was the last time anyone had looked at her and seen something other than a tool to be used? The hesitation Zara's training screamed at her to complete the mission. Every instinct honed by years of conditioning demanded she drive the blade forward and end this. But something had shifted in that moment of eye contact, something that made her hand shake and her breath catch. "You're not what I expected," she heard herself say, the words foreign on her tongue. She never spoke to targets beyond what was necessary, never engaged, never hesitated. Julian's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't try to run or call for help. Instead, he carefully removed his glasses and set them on the desk. "What did you expect?" "A monster," Zara replied honestly. someone who deserved to die, and now she stared at him, really looked at him for the first time. The gentle curve of his mouth, the way his shoulders remained squared despite his fear, the careful way he moved his hands to show he meant no threat. "Now I don't know. My name is Julian," he said softly. "Julian Rivers. I teach undergraduate archaeology at Columbia 3 days a week, and I spend the rest of my time here, trying to piece together stories that have been lost to time. I have a cat named Ptolemy who destroys my furniture, and I make terrible coffee but excellent grilled cheese sandwiches." "Why are you telling me this?" Zara's voice was rougher than she intended. "Because you're hesitating. That means some part of you doesn't want to kill me." He took a careful step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "And I think you're more than whatever someone has made you into." The words hit her like a physical blow. No one had ever suggested she might be more than her training, more than the weapon the syndicate had forged. "You don't know anything about me. I know you're skilled enough to get past museum security without triggering a single alarm. I know you could have killed me the moment you walked in, but you didn't. I know you're struggling with something right now, and that struggle means you're human, no matter what anyone has told you." Zara's hand tightened on the blade. "I was trained to kill, not to feel. Feelings are weaknesses." "Who told you that?" "The people who made me what I am." Julian's expression softened with something that looked almost like compassion. "And what do you think you are, a weapon? Nothing more." "I don't believe that." He took another step closer, close enough now that she could smell his cologne, something warm and woodsy that reminded her of autumn afternoons she'd never been allowed to enjoy. "Weapons don't hesitate. They don't question. They don't look at their targets and see humanity." "I don't," Zara started to protest, but the words died in her throat, because he was right. She was seeing him as human, was seeing the kindness in his eyes and the gentleness in his voice, and it was destroying everything she thought she knew about herself. "What's your name?" Julian asked. "Names are irrelevant. I am Operative 774. That's not a name, that's a designation." "What did your parents call you?" "I don't have parents. I was raised by the organization." "Then what do you call yourself? When you're alone, when no one else is listening, what name do you think of as yours?" Zara's breath caught. She hadn't thought of that name in years. The one whispered to her by a caretaker in her earliest memories, before the syndicate had taken even that away. "Zara," she whispered. "Zara." The way he said it, like it was something precious, made her chest tighten. "That's a beautiful name. Beauty is irrelevant. Only efficiency matters. You're wrong." Julian's voice was gentle but firm. "Beauty matters. Kindness matters. The way you're looking at me right now, the conflict in your eyes, that matters. You're not just a weapon, Zara. You're a person." The blade slipped from her suddenly nerveless fingers, clattering to the floor. The sound seemed to echo in the small office, and Zara stared at the fallen weapon in shock. She had never dropped a weapon before. Never. "I don't understand what's happening to me," she whispered. Julian slowly bent down and picked up the blade, holding it carefully by the handle. Instead of turning it on her or trying to use it for protection, he simply set it on his desk, well out of reach. "I think," he said gently, "you're remembering how to be human." The awakening Zara backed away from the desk, her heart hammering against her ribs. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to complete the mission and return to headquarters for her next assignment. She wasn't supposed to feel this crushing weight in her chest, the strange warmth that spread through her whenever Julian looked at her with those impossibly kind eyes. "I should leave," she said, but her feet remained rooted to the spot. "You could," Julian agreed, "but then you'd never know what you're capable of becoming." "I know what I am, what I've always been. Do you?" He moved to the window, gazing out at the city lights. "Tell me about the first time you killed someone." The question hit her like ice water. "I don't." "You do remember. I can see it in your eyes. Tell me." Zara closed her eyes, and the memory came flooding back, not the sanitized version she'd been trained to recall, but the real one. She'd been 16, on her first solo mission. The target had been a journalist who'd gotten too close to exposing the syndicate. She'd cornered him in his apartment, and just before she'd struck, he'd pulled out a photo of his daughter, a little girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile. "He showed me a picture," she whispered, "of his daughter. She was 7 years old. Missing her front teeth, she'd drawn him a picture of them together, and he carried it in his wallet. Did you kill him? Yes. The word came out broken, but I threw up afterward. I couldn't stop shaking. They told me it was normal, that it would pass with experience. And did it? Zara opened her eyes, meeting Julian's gaze. I thought it had. I thought I'd become what they wanted me to be. But now you're remembering that little girl's picture. You're remembering what it felt like to be human. It hurts, she said, surprised by the admission. This feeling, it hurts. Julian's expression softened. That's your conscience waking up. It's supposed to hurt. That pain is what makes us human. It's what stops us from becoming monsters. The syndicate will come looking for me. When I don't report back, they'll send someone else. Then we'll figure something out. Together. The word was foreign to her. She'd never worked with anyone, never trusted anyone, never relied on anyone but herself. You don't have to do this alone anymore, Zara. You don't have to be alone anymore. The simple kindness in his voice nearly brought her to her knees. When was the last time someone had offered her companionship without expecting something in return? When was the last time someone had looked at her and seen possibility instead of danger? Why? She asked. Why would you help me? I came here to kill you. Because I've spent my entire life studying human nature, and I know the difference between someone who's evil and someone who's been conditioned to believe they are. He moved closer, slowly, giving her time to retreat if she wanted. You're not evil, Zara. You're just lost. I've killed 47 people, and you remember every one of them, don't you? If you were truly a monster, you wouldn't remember. You wouldn't care. But you do. She did. Every face, every name when she'd known them. Every moment of their last breath. The syndicate had told her the memories would fade, that eventually she'd stop seeing their faces in her dreams. But they'd lied. She saw them all. Every night. I don't know how to be anything else, she admitted. Then let me teach you. Julian's voice was gentle, patient. Let me show you what it means to live instead of just survive. And if I can't learn, if I'm too broken, then we'll figure that out too. But I don't think you're broken, Zara. I think you're just remembering who you were before they tried to take it away. She stared at him, this man who should fear her, who should be running or calling for help. Instead, he was offering her something she'd never dared to hope for, a chance at redemption, at becoming something more than a weapon. I don't even know where to start, she whispered. Julian smiled, and it was like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. How about we start with coffee? I know I said I make terrible coffee, but I make excellent hot chocolate. And then you can tell me about this artifact that's supposedly so dangerous. You're not afraid of me. I'm terrified, he admitted, but not of you. I'm afraid of what someone did to you, of the pain you must have endured to become what they made you. But you, the person I'm looking at right now, you're not someone to fear. You're someone to help. For the first time in her life, Zara felt something other than the cold efficiency of her training. It was warm and terrifying and wonderful, and she didn't have a name for it yet. But as Julian smiled at her, she thought it might be hope. The choice of hot chocolate was perfect. Zara sat across from Julian in his tiny break room, her hands wrapped around the warm mug, marveling at the simple pleasure of taste. The syndicate had fed her nutritional supplements and protein bars designed for optimal performance. But she couldn't remember the last time she'd enjoyed the act of consuming something. You're staring at the marshmallows like they're going to attack, Julian observed with gentle amusement. I've never had marshmallows before. The admission felt strange. The syndicate believes pleasure is a distraction from duty. The syndicate sounds like a group of people who've forgotten how to live. Julian leaned back in his chair, studying her. Tell me about the artifact I supposedly found. Zara set down her mug carefully. It's a Mesopotamian tablet, approximately 4,000 years old, but it's not what it appears to be. Hidden within the cuneiform script is a cipher one that contains the names and locations of every syndicate operative, every safe house, every financial account. It's essentially a complete map of their global network, and they want me dead. Because I might decode it. Because you will decode it. Your reputation precedes you, Dr. Rivers. You're one of the few archaeologists in the world with the skills necessary to crack something that complex. Julian was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. How do you know all this? I was briefed before the mission. The Syndicate believes in thorough preparation. No. I mean, how do you know about the cipher hidden in the tablet? That would require extensive knowledge of both ancient languages and modern cryptography. Zara felt heat rise in her cheeks. They trained me in multiple disciplines. It makes me more effective, Zara. Julian's voice was gentle but persistent. You're not just an assassin, are you? You're brilliant. Intelligence is a tool, nothing more. Stop. Julian leaned forward, his eyes intense. Stop diminishing yourself. Stop reducing everything you are to what they wanted you to be. You're incredibly intelligent, and that's something to be proud of, not ashamed of. The warmth in his voice made her chest tight. I don't know how to be proud of anything. Then learn. Start now. Tell me something you've always wanted to know but never had the chance to explore. Zara stared at him, the question catching her off guard. I don't understand. If you could study anything, learn anything, what would it be? What makes you curious? Curiosity is not allowed, I know. But I'm asking anyway, deep down. What calls to you? Zara closed her eyes, searching through memories she'd long suppressed. Music. She said finally, the word barely above a whisper. When I was very young, before the intensive training began, I heard someone playing piano. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. I asked my handler if I could learn, and they told me it was frivolous. What piece was it? I don't know. I never found out. Julian stood abruptly and disappeared into his office. When he returned, he was carrying a small speaker. I may not have a piano, but I have something almost as good. He scrolled through his phone and selected a piece. The room filled with the gentle, haunting melody of Debussy's Clair de Lune. Zara's breath caught. That's it. That's the piece I heard. One of the most beautiful compositions ever written. Julian sat back down, watching her face as the music played. You're crying. She touched her cheek, surprised to find it wet. I don't cry. I was trained not to cry. You're human. Humans cry when something moves them. The music washed over her, and with it came a flood of emotions she'd spent years suppressing. Grief for the child she'd been, anger at what had been stolen from her, and something else, something that felt like possibility. I don't know what to do with this, she said, gesturing at her tears. You don't have to do anything, just feel it. And then what? I can't just walk away from the Syndicate. They'll hunt me down. Then we make sure they can't find you. Julian's smile was soft but determined. I told you you're not alone anymore. We'll decode the tablet together, expose the Syndicate, and give you a chance at a real life. You don't understand. They'll kill you just for helping me. Then we'd better make sure we succeed. Zara stared at him. This man who'd shown her more kindness in a few hours than she'd experienced in her entire life. Why are you doing this? Why risk everything for someone like me? Julian was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was soft. Because when you dropped that blade, I saw who you really are. I saw someone who's been hurt and manipulated, and conditioned to believe terrible things about herself. But underneath all that, I saw someone beautiful. Beautiful. The word hit her like a physical blow. You said that before. I meant it, not just physically, though you are stunning, but your soul, Zara. Your capacity for goodness despite everything they've done to you. That's what's beautiful. I don't know if I can be what you think I am. You already are. You just need to remember how to see it. Zara looked at this man who'd offered her salvation without asking for anything in return. Who'd looked at a trained killer and seen someone worth saving. The choice should have been impossible, everything she'd ever known against this fragile, impossible hope. But as the music played and Julian smiled at her with such gentle faith, she realized it wasn't impossible at all. Okay, she whispered. Let's save the world. The transformation 3 months later, Zara stood in the same office where she'd first met Julian. But everything had changed. The Mesopotamian tablet had yielded its secrets under their combined expertise, and the information they'd uncovered had brought down the entire Syndicate network. Government agencies on 6 continents had conducted simultaneous raids, arresting hundreds of operatives and dismantling an organization that had operated in shadows for centuries. but the real transformation had been in her. "You're different," Julian observed, looking up from his computer where he was putting the finishing touches on their academic paper about the tablet's historical significance. "You're lighter somehow." Zara smiled a real smile that reached her eyes, something that had become natural over the past few months. "I had a good teacher." "I didn't teach you how to be human, Zara. I just reminded you that you already were." She moved to the window, gazing out at the museum's sculpture garden, where families wandered among the art installations. A little girl with pigtails was pointing excitedly at a bronze statue, and her father was lifting her up to get a better look. Once, the sight would have reminded Zara of the journalist she killed, would have brought the familiar crushing weight of guilt. Now, it still hurt. She suspected it always would, but it was a different kind of pain. A healing pain. "I've been thinking about the journalist," she said quietly. Julian joined her at the window, his presence warm and steady beside her. "The first one. I found his daughter. She's 14 now, living with her grandmother in Portland. She's a good student, wants to be a writer like her father was." Zara's voice was soft. "I've been sending money anonymously for her college fund. That's a beautiful thing to do. It doesn't bring him back." "No," Julian agreed, "but it honors his memory. It makes his loss mean something." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the families in the garden. Over the past months, Zara had discovered that silence with Julian was different from the empty quiet of her former life. This was full of possibility, of shared understanding, of a connection she'd never known existed. "The University of Edinburgh called," Julian said eventually. "They're offering us both positions. Joint research into historical ciphers and codes. It would be a fresh start, away from everything that happened here. Us both, if you want it. If you're ready to try being Dr. Zara Nightshade instead of Operative 774. Dr. Zara Nightshade." The title felt strange and wonderful. "I'd like that." "Good. Because I've gotten used to having you round. You make excellent coffee. And you're the only person who appreciates my terrible archaeology jokes." Zara laughed, the sound still surprising her. "Sometimes your jokes are terrible, but you laugh anyway. I'm still learning how to laugh." "You're patient with my practice." Julian turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "Zara, there's something I need to tell you." Her heart skipped. Over the months, their partnership had evolved into something deeper, something that made her feel warm and terrified and hopeful all at once. But neither of them had named it yet. "What is it?" "I love you." The words were simple, honest, perfect. "I love your brilliant mind and your terrible coffee, and the way you get that little wrinkle between your eyebrows when you're decoding something complex. I love that you cry at piano music and that you've learned to laugh at my jokes. I love that you're brave enough to rebuild yourself from nothing." Zara's breath caught. "Julian, you don't have to say anything back. I just needed you to know. I love you too." The admission tumbled out before she could stop it. "I don't know what that means or how to do it properly, but I know that when I'm with you, I feel like the person I was meant to be." Julian's smile was radiant. "You're already doing it perfectly." "Am I? Because I still don't understand how someone like you could love someone like me. Someone like you." "You mean someone brilliant and beautiful and brave enough to choose goodness over everything." She'd been taught. Julian reached out, gently taking her hands. "Zara, you're not the weapon they tried to make you. You're the woman you chose to become." "I chose to become her because you saw her first, because you believed she existed when I couldn't see her myself. And now," Zara looked into his eyes, those warm, intelligent, impossibly kind eyes that had seen through her conditioning to the person underneath. "Now I see her too, and I like who she is. Good. Because I plan to spend the rest of my life reminding you how extraordinary she is." As Julian leaned in to kiss her, Zara marveled at the journey that had brought her here. She'd been trained to kill, conditioned to be a weapon, taught that feelings were weakness. But Julian had shown her that love wasn't weakness, it was the strongest force in the universe. It was what had given her the courage to choose humanity over conditioning, hope over despair. The kiss was gentle, sweet, full of promise. And as they held each other in the office where their story had begun, Zara knew that her transformation was complete. She was no longer Operative 774. She was Dr. Zara Nightshade's scholar, partner, and most importantly, human. The weapon had learned to love, and in doing so, she'd learned to live outside the window. The little girl with pigtails was still pointing at the bronze statue, her father still lifting her up to see. But now when Zara looked at them, she didn't see a reminder of her past failures. She saw possibility. She saw hope. She saw the future she and Julian would build together, a future where love conquered all the darkness that had come before. The end.